At the height of the Reaper War, another war was taking place in the lawless Terminus system. Corporations had discovered an invaluable secret on the Krogan planet Garvug, and a bloody war was fought over it. Here is the history of the war on Garvug and what was really on the planet. Back in 354 CE, 2,500 years before the events of the Reaper War, Garvug was a Krogan world, one of the many bargain worlds given to the Krogan after they had defeated the Rachni. But even before giving it to the Krogan, the world was mostly inhospitable, with only a small farm belt around its equator and well-insulated marine life in its seas. Technically a life-bearing world, but no one wanted to live on the frozen planet. When the Krogan took over, it didn't take them long to use up the planet's resources, and eventually, when the Krogan were in their prime, they were too much for Garvug. When the Krogan adapted to the planet, they began reproducing and filled the vast underground bunkers of Garvug with their families, each with hundreds of younglings. It was too much for the planet's limited resources. By the turn of the next century, the narrow coral reefs of Garvug had been destroyed by pollution and overfishing, to the extent that the Krogan abandoned it. They looked for other planets instead. The story of what happened on Garvug was treated as an object lesson by the Citadel Council, that the Krogan could not be trusted to keep their own numbers in check. Since the majority of the Krogan have left the planet, it then turned into a frozen wasteland, now home to corporate eco-engineering efforts, trying to implement sustainable agriculture and aquaculture practices. But despite the corporations trying to take the planet back, some Krogan remain, and alongside them are Vorcha. Krogan make up about 40% of the population, and Vorcha 30%. The two races are a constant threat, and so the corporations pay mercenaries very well to keep their money-making operations safe, until it all changes in 2185. It was business as usual on Garvug, until something changed, which made the corporations take a deeper interest in the planet. Corporate armies from Citadel space began arriving, and they would cross the line. The corporations organized a coup of the Krogan clan-based government in exchange for unfettered access to the planet. Eco-engineering firms like Binary Helix and Guanghui Solutions began seeking licenses to allow them to repair the balance of nature on the planet at any cost. Alongside them, mining firms like Sonax Industries wanted access to the state-protected iridium deposits. The corporate-backed coup made tensions reach an all-time high, and fighting broke out on the planet's capital, Dazil. The state's army was slowly gaining the upper hand, but reinforcements from off-world for both sides were still arriving. As the fighting escalated, comm buoys aimed at the star Paz were taken out by state starships, cutting the system off from all outside communication. The intergalactic press got a new ship through the relay, bringing video from the planet's capital to show what was really happening. Corporate forces were fighting for air and space supremacy, shooting down at least 2 ships, but losing 5 of their own. The fighting on Garvug gained galactic-wide attention, and peace activists even tried to protest the building war. A demonstration was held at the headquarters of all the corporations involved: Binary Helix, Guanghui Solutions, and Sonax Industries. The protesters demanded that the corporations lift their siege of the capital, and so they burned corporate flags in effigy and called for a galactic boycott of all 3 companies' products. While these protests were happening, the Krogan were only amused. Erdnot Galem, clan media director on Tuchanka, said, "The corporations will win the war, no doubt, but are they dumb enough to expect peace ever again?" And it did seem like the corporate forces were going to win. They scored a major victory when Sonax infantry units surrounded Clan Halot's ancestral forces, and then pounded it with rock-propelled grenades, singularity projectors, and mass accelerator fire. The troops then stormed the doors and took the Krogan fortress, destroying the Krogan resistance and replacing the clan flag with the Sonax Industries logo. The bloody invasion resulted in 12 casualties. As Clan Halot was being taken down, elsewhere in the city, troops had made their way through booby-trapped power stations, hospitals, and water purification facilities, pushing their line as deep in as they could. Alongside this, more backup was arriving, and new corporate armies were joining the planetside forces. They then took the comm buoys from the state-run forces in a short 2-hour battle. Afterwards, the state's remaining forces retreated to faster than light to avoid total destruction. Now, with full control of the comms buoys and access to direct communication, the corporatists had the upper hand. Sonax Industries' Supreme Commander Lyra Spite told media that they wouldn't be censoring them, but would work with them to publicize what they expected to be a swift and relatively painless victory. The corporatists seemed very confident after this, and when they realized that the Halit clan chieftain Run was missing, they thought they had him. Initially suspected to be among the dead in the clan's fortress, he somehow had successfully retreated to the countryside and then made a public announcement. In his radio broadcast, he belittled the corporatist invaders and rallied his followers to fight them. "We are clan. They are merely co-workers. If we make their victory cost them enough, they will leave." Sonax Supreme Commander Lyra Spite responded in a press conference saying, "I would like to thank Mr. Halat for broadcasting from a radio tower so that we know exactly where he is. If he thinks he will outlast us by causing financial and physical damage, he is unaware of the high value of his planet and the consortium's long-term strategic vision." Thinking they had an easy target, the corporatists targeted the Garvug radio tower with intent to kill the Krogan leader. But the state army claimed a victory, saying that Halat Rund led an ambush that destroyed 2 armored personnel carriers and shot down a Mantis gunship. The proof of the victory was discovered in a video, where the Mantis gunship in question was clearly in flames, and the Krogan were pissing on it. Despite the proof, the corporate consortium remained firm in their stance, saying that no planes were shot down, and that their bombs killed over 100 Krogan and Vorcha infantry near the CXN radio tower. Even though they now had control of the tower, Halit Rund was still missing. Desperate to find him, corporate forces hunted for the clan chieftain and former head of state, even bringing in experts in fugitive recovery from places like Omega. Drones and searchcraft were also assisting to search the hills of Dazil. Binary Helix even imported 2 Varen handlers to catch the clan chief's scent. They were desperate. Soldiers, reporters, and even civilians' phones were also confiscated, in hopes that if Run called anyone, they could trace his location. When Special Ops soldiers made a positive ID on his convoy and then followed him to a ranch house in the hills north of the city of Ikrit, they believed they had finally found their man. So they used a laser and drone to shoot a rapid-fire mass accelerator directly into the living room, unleashing what they called a decapitating strike on Rund and turning the house into a flaming crater. To confirm they killed their target, DNA samples of the wreckage were sent to Binary Helix's lab in the city of Jundrag. But before they could confirm it was him, Halat Rund sent them a message. He released a 30-minute video saying, "I'll save you some time. That DNA you're analyzing was some other hump." Then he rallied his people once again, saying, "They moved into our house. Now it's time for them to pay the rent." Sonax Industries' Supreme Commander Lyra Spite responded by saying, "Halit Rund is a head of state. He should learn that picking up a rifle doesn't make you a soldier, and talking into a video camera even less so." And so the war continued. Corporate forces would intercept a shipment of explosives, surface-to-air missiles, mortars, and small weapons intended for the rebel forces, sent by Clan Urdnot, which was considered a major find. And while Corporatist and Binary Helix used it as a moment to reinforce their rule on the planet, Urdnot Jat, spokesperson and financial arm on Tuchanka for Clan Urdnot, was unimpressed, saying, "What is Binary Helix to us, or Sonax or Gongui Solutions? They barely come to our planet, let alone sell us anything." Others were not so impressed with the corporations trying to take over Garvug, and several missteps during the war resulted in Sonax Industries losing share value and being bought out in what was claimed to be a friendly takeover. Umsung Holdings would pay 119 billion credits in debt while investing in the company. Unfortunately, the new change in leadership didn't do much for their war on Garvug, as the new CEO supported the corporate takeover, saying that the infrastructure of the occupation areas were unharmed and were beginning to turn a profit. The correct move is not to withdraw, but to fully commit to establishing a permanent peace zone on the planet. For several months, the corporatists would hold the capital unopposed by state forces, while the Krogan and Vorcha still fought back, with shooting sprees and skycar bombs, but they couldn't get close to the fortress-like enclave. The Vorcha and Krogan were also infighting, and their dead bodies from their fights were found amongst the dead. Outside the fortress, the hunt for Rund was still ongoing, until he made himself known. Krogan forces destroyed the Sonax Corporation's command ship, Excelsior, that had been in orbit over the planet. They used a hidden warp bomb, and hundreds on board died. Afterwards, the guerrilla commander Halot Run uploaded a video where he was missing an arm, and all it said was, "You humans have an expression. Tag." Enraged by the taunt, corporatist forces struck back, conducting over 150 house-to-house raids and bombarding 33 targets in the mountain regions of Dazil. Amidst their strong effort, rumors had begun to spread about Sonax Industries and Binary Helix developing a rift between the two major forces, which Sonax's Supreme Commander Lyra Spite denied. As it turns out, the rift was true, and it was because Sonax was using chemical warheads. Binary Helix made a public announcement, pointing to a lack of unity amongst the corporatist alliance, saying, "Our corporation profits from robust alien ecosystems. Dropping nerve gas is not only useless, but counterproductive. The concentrations necessary to kill a Krogan or Vorcha will kill everything else downwind." To which Sonax denied the claims, saying that Binary Helix was only speaking in hypothetical terms. Chemical weapons are militarily and politically unfeasible, and so we aren't using them in our munitions. This isn't the 20th century. After this, the corporations would continue to lose more public favor, especially when a video was spread through the extranet of Sonax Industries soldiers executing a dozen Krogan. Alleged guerrilla sympathizers who defied their captors were taking their last breaths as they were pushed into a mass grave. The company's stock price initially dropped, but then went back up when the perception around it began to shift. Many believe that their execution was the cost of doing business in Garvug, since all Krogan are warriors and are at least able to defend themselves. After public perception continued to fall, eventually Binary Helix decided that they were withdrawing their support from the war and the planet. In an announcement, they said, "The time has come to end our involvement with partners that are not acting in good faith and reinvest ourselves in more dynamic markets galaxy-wide." When Sonax was asked to comment, Supreme Commander Lyra Spite said, "Sonax's resolve will not waver. We are already reaping profit from this planet. If it is not coming fast enough for Binary Helix, then I'm sure Guanghui Solutions will enjoy taking their share." The corporatist army would continue to suffer more defeats after losing Binary Helix, when one of their generals was found dead under suspicious circumstances. Noah Vardos died of a gunshot wound to the head. Even weirder was that no inquiry into security procedures was planned. No suspected leads were reported, but an e-memo had been sent to all senior base personnel, warning them of strict consequences if they spoke to the press. Though that didn't seem to stop at least one person, since a suicide note was sent to the press. The 3-page note detailed the general blaming himself for pursuing but not catching 3 Krogan who escaped off-planet, who were believed to be behind the warp bomb attack on Sonax's command ship Excelsior. The note also says that the situation on the planet was worsening, and so he was taking responsibility for those he had gotten killed for half a credit a share. Sonax refused to comment. Sonax would then go on to lose 3 iridium mining facilities that they had captured early on in the war. Krogan and Vorcha soldiers set off truck bombs to penetrate the outer fences before they shot all personnel. They then used explosives to collapse the mouths of the mines. Sonax mostly uses robo-miners, so there were few casualties, but it hit Sonax hard where it mattered, financially, and a day before their shareholder meeting. The shareholder meeting was intended to be kept a secret, but when the location leaked, Protesters gathered en masse, and their voices were heard. The Sonax board ruled 6-5 to withdraw troops from the war beginning in 35 days, after 6 months of fighting. At this point, war casualties had reached 2,586 of Sonax's own troops and 438 contracted soldiers, while also costing the company 21 billion credits. Shortly after this announcement, Guanghui Solutions also revealed their plan to withdraw from Garvug. With the war over and the corporatists essentially losing, Supreme Commander Lyra Spite's resume was found floating across the extranet, but she claimed it had been faked, even though the resume knew all of her employment history. When her and the first corporate soldiers began their retreat of the planet, Krogan and Vorcha crowds danced in the streets and fired weapons as the starships took off, which was supposed to happen for the next 6 weeks. With corporate forces finally leaving Garvug, Haylet Rund began his takeover. Guerrilla gunmen took over government buildings throughout the capital of Dazil, with little resistance. And once he regained control, Rund released an announcement. After this year of bloodshed and uncertainty, our home stands strong. Garvug has brought down the tyrants and bloodsuckers of the galaxy. Our task is now to rebuild on the ashes of our enemies and take this colony to a victorious future. Everything was looking bright for Haylet and his forces until a massive surprise attack hit Dazil. Mass cannons destroyed most of the buildings within the city and the seat of government that Rund had just recently retaken. Reports of assassination and precision bombings were also reported, but Sonax Industries still controlled all the comm buoys within the PAS system, so their accuracy was questioned. Sonax reports showed a large fleet moving from behind one of Garvug's moons to settle right over the planet's capital. And among the fleet were several Binary Helix ships. Binary Helix, the company that had claimed to withdraw first. When asked to confirm the reports, all their press secretary said was, "You'll see." Sonax wasn't shy about what they had done. Their Supreme Commander, Lyra Spite, held a press conference showing what little remained of Dazil. She showed very little concern for the lives that had been lost from their brutal bombardment, but pointed out that the roads, spaceport, and mining infrastructures remained intact. Sonax Industry, Binary Helix, and Guanghui Solutions were all behind the attack. Their stocks skyrocketed after the reveal, with Sonax's jumping nearly 1,000%. Their attack was a success, with 90 of the 112 enemy commanders either captured or dead, and one of those was Haylet Rund. He had survived a poisoning attempt before fleeing in a skycar that was driven out of the air by a Guanghui Solutions airship. His autopsy revealed that after Rund's heavily armored car slammed into a mountainside, gunfire turned his ship into a fireball. Everyone trapped inside died of smoke inhalation. To confirm his death, the corporate coalition is making the autopsy video and gun camera footage publicly available. They also held a press conference to go over their carefully curated tactic, explaining how they controlled the media for several months prior to the attack. Binary Helix explained that their rift from chemical warfare was a ruse, how they left special forces disguised as civilians after they left, and how these undercover forces were tasked with pinpointing insurgent leaders when they came out of hiding. They also revealed how the true Sonax board vote was 8-3 to continue their war efforts, and how the board was in on the entire thing. What they called the wooden horse gambit. Their CFO said, "We had a responsibility to keep the company from going under. We regret that there was no other way than to ask for forgiveness after the fact." When asked if the board would face any charges for perpetrating fraud on stockholders, Sonax explained that Ilium's laws were quite flexible in their favor. Later, a 90-minute interview with Lyra Spite, the Sonax Supreme Commander, revealed that she was behind the plan. She sat down with Emily Wong to reveal how it all happened. She says, "I presented the idea to the higher-ups of letting some negative stories through the comm buoys to win trust with the news media, but it developed into more. When the offer was made, the idea clicked. The board realized the power of winning by losing. From that moment on, we played the wounded bird and gave the snakes exactly what they wanted to see. And she didn't regret it. The only thing she regretted was General Vardos killing himself. He had known the real strategy, but had seen good people die under him, and saw the residents of Garvug dying too. But even the story of the Krogan being executed was fake. It was a test, and it showed the corporate coalition how desensitized people were, and how they could use it to their advantage. Their plan worked, they won, and they made a shitload of money because of it. But that wasn't all. It wasn't until after their massive surprise attack that the real reason behind the war and why the corporations wanted the planet so badly was revealed. A team of reporters were working undercover for several months at Guanghui Solutions, and here they uncovered that the company and Sonax Industries had been concealing a cache of Prothean technology on Garvug that they planned to use for their own financial gain. The reporters documented everything, which caught the attention of the Citadel Council's own committee on paleotechnology, which demanded that all of the corporations involved must allow the committee's inspection team full access to the Garvug site, or face reprisals to their offices in Citadel space. But for Sonax, the worst was only just beginning. Citadel Council investigators announced formal charges against 14 of the 24 board members of both Sonax Industries and Guanghui Solutions. They had confirmed that the companies withheld Prothean technology from the galactic community for personal gain, and instigated an interplanetary war to do so. The council used unnamed specters who secured irrefutable evidence of the corporation's complicity. One of the many indicted was Lyra Spite. The High Commission of Galactic Rights said, "The acts of these corporations went beyond mere illegality into crimes against the galactic populace. We invoke the right of the council to admit evidence garnered by council representatives to prosecute the parties involved for their misdeeds." Lyra Spite's office responded by saying, "Try." After this, she was supposedly almost assassinated by Council Spectre Lonar Mayron. He apparently made an attempt on her life, but was wounded by her security. Mayron's assistant died, shot after a weapons malfunction made him vulnerable. Sonax officials allowed journalists to view but not photograph a charred body that they claimed was Urjan Taltz, Mayron's companion. The Sonax board was looking into complying with the Citadel Council, but also said that since they were in the Terminus system, their act of aggression goes beyond any legal attempt to solve the matter. The Council was not happy with Sonax, Lyra Spite, or anything surrounding Garvug, and public perception of the company was dropping to new lows. So Umsung, Sonax's parent company, began to fully take over. They announced sweeping changes to upper management, as well as retirement packages for all the board members who were being investigated. They also changed their name, rebranding Sonax to Kore, Kore. Lyra Spite, the once Supreme Commander, would also be replaced, but instead she decided to flee. She altered her appearance before departing on a flight, with a bag full of negotiable bearer bonds and platinum. Alongside her were 5 of her trusted bodyguards. The council spokesperson speaking on her escape said that she better find another galaxy if she wants to stay out of their reach. But unfortunately for her, she didn't get far enough. The body of a 47-year-old with a gene print matching that of her Medicard to a 99.998 accuracy was presented on the Omega space station. Her bodyguards explained that Spite had been in her hotel when she began complaining of a headache before she collapsed and could not be revived. The medical examiner declared her death a result of a massive stroke, with no evidence of foul play. But if you ask me, that sounds a little bit like poisoning. Maybe a specter finally got to her. After this, no other news or updates in Garvug were reported, until 2186, when an official ship belonging to the Citadel Committee on Paleotechnology was shot down over Garvug, meaning that the data files on the Prothean inventions could now be in criminal hands. If the corporations maintained control of the planet, or if the Krogan and Vorcha retook their world right before the Reaper invasion is unknown. And what happened to them after the Reaper invasion is also a mystery. But this is a good example of how fucked the corporations in Mass Effect are. Unsurprising, but we don't get to see too much of this element, aside from maybe Binary Helix and their horrible Thresher Maw and Rachni experiments. And of course, we all know Cerberus is bad, but they're all bad. Hopefully we get some interesting lore about these corporations when Mass Effect 5 comes out. And maybe we find out who ended up finding those Prothean inventions and who shot down that ship. But let me know what you think. What do you think about the War of Garvug? And is this something you would have liked to have seen in-game? Let me know all your thoughts below, and thank you so much for watching. Thank you to my channel members, thank you to my Patreon supporters. Thank you all so much for your support, and I'll see you next time.